All praise to the Most High, Ahia, and to his son, Yahayasha, Messiah, Yadahaya. This is Brother Holly here with the first Spirit of Truth broadcast here on the second Spirit of Truth broadcast here on their High House channel, as well as the House of Ahia channel on this set apart Shabbat day. First and foremost, as always, I'd like to give all glory, praise, and honor to the great I am, he who is, was, and is come, the Almighty One, Yadahaya, and to his son, Yahayasha Messiah, who gave himself for us that we might have life, and that life is in him, Yadahaya. Now, in this second broadcast, I said out in the first broadcast that I would briefly go over this. I would talk about it. The one good thing that I found about this new version I'm reviewing, the 120 book Holy Bible and Apocryphal Collection, Literal Standard Translation, and the LSV, the Literal Standard Translation. I said that of all the things I found in it, and all the things I found in this particular compilation of scripture, about 90% of it has just been hogwash. Just pure, unadulterated, universal salvation supporting hogwash. Has absolutely nothing to do with the proper rendition of the scriptures that the compiler of this book, of this collection of books, stated early on in the preface that he's a universal salvationist. And his literal translation, or his literal translation version, if I may, is akin to that. It proves that, or attempts to prove it. Well, you can change what the words say all you like. You can change tense. You can try to be as inclusive in your descriptions as possible, but you cannot hide the truth of how the Most High made these covenants and made these promises and who he made these promises to. You can, if you try to bold-faced lie, straightforward and bold-faced lie, and say not for just the children of Jacob, then anybody with a copy of the scripture would just throw your book out. But you can try to be slippery and change tense here, add a word there to try to lead the witness, and then go find some of the most heretical documents you can find. The Epistle of Barnabas being one of them, and that is proudly placed in this book. The Epistle of Barnabas and First Clement and others that basically just say it's all allegory. Everything you read in the Old Testament is just allegory. It's always been about the church, replacement theology. We all know these old tropes and these old lies spun by the Constantine Christians trying to write themselves into the story. But what saith the scripture? We're going to read today, how I wills it to be so. We're going to read today from the book of Genesis and from the book of Romans on the subject of who is the fullness of the Gentiles. It says it clearly in the literal translation who the fullness of the Gentiles are. No doubt in my mind, no doubt in anyone's mind. If you get a copy of this, and just for that, it will be worth the $130 odd. What I'm going to show you today will be worth getting a copy of this, so you can prove to your Constantine Christian brethren or kinsmen, your family members, even an uncircumcised of heart and flesh Gentile who has butchered the scriptures could not hide the truth found in them. All praises. So as we said earlier, we're going to be reading from the 120 book Holy Bible and Apocryphal Collection Literal Standard Version. Turn, if you will, to the book of Genesis, chapter 48. And we're going to start reading at verse 8. And it says here, and YASHARAHLA sees the sons of Joseph and says, who are these? And Joseph says to his father, they are my sons, whom Allahiyah has given to me in this place. Now, I read it as it should be It doesn't say YASHARAHLA, it says ISRAEL, but we know here at the highest house and house of high that ISRAEL is not a word per se, that it is a compound phrase for three pagan deities. Is representing Isis, the pagan female deity of the Egyptians. Ra representing Amen-Ra, the male pagan deity of the Egyptians, the sun deity of the Egyptians. And El, the pagan Babylonian deity of thunder and power. Put it all together is Israel. And to say you are an Israelite is to say you belong to those three pagan deities. We have made this claim more times I can count here on these channels. Now, that's why we don't use the term, because it says in the book of Exodus chapter 23 verse 15, I believe it is, that we're not to put the names of foreign deities in our mouth, and we're to be careful not to do it. So I'm careful not to do it, and I instruct you to be careful not to do that. If you see Israel written in any book of scripture, just say YASHARAHLA, because that's what it means. That's what it should be. That's what it is in the underlying Hebrew language. If you see God, it's Allahaya. That's what it should be that's what it is in the underlying Paleo Hebrew. Not Elohim. Him is multiple. That's how they trip you up again. We have it on good report from Deuteronomy chapter 6 verse 4 that our Allahai is one, not several. He says, I am one in Isaiah. I say, I don't know nobody else. So he's not multiple. He's not several. He's one. That's Allahaya. Allahayim is multiple Most High powers. We don't have multiple Most High powers. That would make us believe in like a pantheon of deities, which we don't. We are monotheistic. We believe in one Most High power. Here, O YASHARAHLA, our Yahaya, our Allahaya is one. Numerical one. Not just in unity, numeric one. Oh, praises. Genesis 48 and 8. And YASHARAHLA sees the sons of Joseph and says, who are these? And Joseph says to his father, they are my sons, whom Allahaya has given me in this place. And he says, please bring them to me, and I bless them. Verse 10 is key. And the eyes of YASHARAHLA, or Jacob, have been heavy from age. He is unable to see, and he brings them near to him, and he kisses them and cleaves to them. And Jacob says to Joseph, I had not thought possible to see your face. And behold, Allahaya has also shown me your seed with your highlight. Now, this becomes very revelatory when we read Romans 11. No part in Romans 11 that blindness in part has happened to YASHARAHLA until the fullness of the Gentiles be come in. We're going to read here who the fullness of the Gentiles are in a moment. But right here in Genesis 48, YASHARAHLA, Jacob, was blind because of age. But the Most High opened his eyes that he would see the seed of Joseph, which was Ephraim and Manasseh. That he would see his grandsons, Ephraim and Manasseh. I'll read it one more time because this is key. Remember. Genesis 48:11. And Jacob said to Joseph, I had not thought possible to see your face, and behold, Allahaya has shown me your seed. And Joseph brings them out from between his knees and bows himself on his face to the earth. And Joseph takes them both, Ephraim in his right hand toward Jacob's left, and Manasseh in his left toward Jacob's right, and brings them near to him. And YASHARAHLA puts out his right hand and places it on the head of Ephraim, who is the younger, and his left hand on the head of Manasseh. And he was guided and he has guided his hands wisely. For Manasseh is the firstborn. And he blesses Joseph and says, Allah, before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac habitually walked, Allah, who is feeding me from my being to this day, the messenger who is redeeming me from all evil, blesses these youth, and my name is called on them, and the name of my fathers Abraham and Isaac. That is key. Whose name is called on Ephraim and Manasseh? The name of YASHARAHLA. We see this played out the whole way through Scripture. That the descendants of Ephraim or the house of Joseph is referred to as the house of YASHARAHLA. The northern kingdom is referred to the house of YASHARAHLA. Why? Because Jacob himself placed his name on them. I'll read it again. Genesis chapter 48:15, and he blesses Joseph and says, Allah, before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac habitually walked, Allah, who is feeding me from my being to this day, the messenger who is redeeming me from all evil, blesses these youth, and my name is called on them, and the name of my fathers Abraham and Isaac, and they increase into a multitude in the midst of the land. And Joseph, seeing that his father set his right hand on the head of Ephraim, and it is wrong in his eyes, and he supports the hand of his father to turn it aside from off the head of Ephraim to the head of Manasseh. And Joseph said to his father, Not so, my father, for this is the firstborn. Set your right hand on his head. And his father refuses and says, I have known, my son, I have known. He also becomes a people, and he also is great, and yet his younger brother is greater than he, and his seed is the fullness of the nations. Highlight, underline, put asterisks beside it. We're reading from the literal translation, literal standard version. It says right here in Genesis 48:19 that the seed of Ephraim is, not will be, not was, but is the fullness of the Gentiles, the fullness of the nations. If I can show it to you, I'll show it to you. We'll try. Oh, there we go. Maybe. Nope, you can't see it. Not enough light. Sorry. If you can find a PDF copy of this version, you can look it up for yourself. Or you got to spend $130, $140. And I do say it's not worth the money. I've said it more times than I can count already. And this is the first time I've ever reviewed on these channels. But here's one thing. This is the 1.5% or the 1.5 out of possible 10 that I give this version. It got this very right. For it is the exact same phraseology used in Romans 11. We're going to read it from here in a moment. But we're going to read it from here in Genesis 48 one more time for all those who probably weren't listening. Genesis chapter 48 verse 19 again. And his father refuses and says, I have known, my son, I have known. He also becomes a people, speaking of Manasseh. And he also is great. Yet his younger brother is greater than he, and his seed is the fullness of nations. And he blessed them in that day, saying, By you does YASHARAHLA bless, saying, Allah set you as Ephraim and as Manasseh. And he set Ephraim before Manasseh. And Jacob says to Joseph, Behold, I am dying, and Allah has been with you and has brought you back to the land of your fathers. And I have given to you one portion above your brothers, which I have taken out of the hand of the Amorite by my sword and my bow. That's the end of the chapter. Verse 19 is key. There in verse 19, YASHARAHLA, Jacob, stated that the seed of Ephraim not will be, not could be, but is the fullness of the nations. Hold that thought. Now let's flip over to Romans chapter 11. Romans chapter 11, verse 25. For I do not wish you to be ignorant, brothers, of this secret, that you may not be wise in your own conceits. It says hardness, but blindness is what's said in the King James. That blindness in part to YASHARAHLA has happened until the fullness of the nations may come in. We highlight. So back in Genesis 48, you got to remember Paul was writing this to people who were his brethren, his kinsmen according to the flesh. They would have known the story of the crisscross hands of Ephraim and Manasseh. They've been told that ever since they were little. They had that scroll read to them ever since they were youngsters. That this would make sense to them. It only troubled you because you didn't know the backstory. You didn't know until probably right a few moments ago that the Most High opened Jacob's eyes that he could see Ephraim and Manasseh. So that makes the blindness in part that's happened to YASHARAHLA make sense. That the man himself, who was referred to as YASHARAHLA, had been blinded until the moment that his eyes were opened to see the seed of Joseph, which were Ephraim and Manasseh. And the seed of Ephraim would become the multitude or the fullness of the Gentiles. And they had to come in. Then Romans chapter 11 verse 26 makes perfect sense. That when the seed of Ephraim, who was mixed with the Gentiles, it says it in Hosea chapter 11, that Ephraim will be mixed with the nations, will be mixed with the Gentiles. He's a cake unturned. I'm sure you've heard the camp banging brothers say that 100 times. That Ephraim is a cake unturned. It says in Ezekiel 37 that Ephraim is the stick of Joseph, which is going to be added to the stick of Judah. And the two sticks will be one stick in the Most High's hand. That the two separate houses, the house of Joseph and the house of Judah, will become one again. Two sticks being put together is the process known as grafting. The same thing the apostle Saul, whom we all trust, who the world ignorantly calls Paul, was talking about here in Romans chapter 11. The grafting in of the two sticks, the natural branch and the wild branch being grafted together. The house of YASHARAHLA, which is wild by nature, which had gone off into rebellion, gone off into idolatry, mixed itself with the other nations. And the house of Judah, which according to the book of Hosea, stood pat, stayed with the Most High. They kept on keeping the feast. They kept on following after Torah. But when the seed of Ephraim comes home, when the children of Ephraim, the house of YASHARAHLA, returns, we read in Genesis chapter 48 that his name, that YASHARAHLA's name would be on the seed of Jacob, would be on the seed of Ephraim and on the seed of Manasseh. That Abraham's name would be on them, that Isaac's name would be on them, and Jacob's name would be on them. They are referred to as the house of YASHARAHLA. The house of Judah is referred to by the term Judah, not YASHARAHLA. That's on the seed of the children of Joseph, who were given an extra portion. Oh, praises. We just read it in Genesis chapter 48. And I stopped and made sure you caught the significance of what was being said in Genesis 48. And you should read Genesis 48 as many times as you need to until you understand that Genesis 48 is being quoted right here in Romans 11. I'll read it again. For I do not wish you to be ignorant, brothers, of this secret. This is Romans chapter 11, verse 25. That you may not be wise in your own conceits. That blindness in part to YASHARAHLA has happened until the fullness of the nations may come in. And let's read again from Genesis chapter 48, verse 19. Who is the fullness of the nations? Let's read it again. Genesis chapter 48, verse 19. And his father refuses and says, this is Jacob refusing and says to Joseph, his son, I have known, my son, I have known. He also, speaking of Manasseh, becomes a people, and he also is great. And yet his younger brother is greater than he. And his seed is the fullness of the nations. His younger brother, which was Ephraim, his seed is the fullness of the nations. And it says right here that blindness has happened in part to YASHARAHLA until the seed of Ephraim, the fullness of nations, become in. That's the seed of Ephraim. Now, Romans chapter 11, verse 26 makes perfect sense. Let's read it. And so all YASHARAHLA will be saved, according to as it has been written. There will come forth out of Zion who is delivering, and he will turn away transgression from Jacob. Will you highlight? Where is that found? That's found in Isaiah chapter 59. Let's go to our handy dandy Larry Pale, Hebrew Torah, Lashwan Kadash, Holy Tongue, Bible Scripture, and read it. Why are you reading it from here, Brother Holly? Because it's diffused in this one. I read it in there a couple of times. It was all jacked up. Isaiah chapter 59, verse 20. And the Redeemer shall come to Zion, and unto them that turn from transgression in Jacob, saith Ahiah. As for me, this is my covenant with them, saith Ahiah. My spirit that is upon thee, and my words which I have put in thy mouth shall not depart out of thy mouth, nor out of the mouth of thy seed, or nor out of the mouth of thy seed, saith Ahiah, from henceforth and forever will you highlight. What did David say in Psalm 119? I have hid your word in my heart that I might not sin against you. This is the covenant we will take away our sin. Let's read Romans 11 from the Ahiah, Yeshaya Bible scriptures. Let's read Romans 11 from here. Romans 11, verse 25. For I would not, brethren, that you should be ignorant of this mystery, lest you should be wise in your own conceits, that blindness in part has happened to YASHARAHLA until the fullness of the Gentiles be come in. Who's the fullness of the Gentiles? We read it over here in Genesis 48:19, who the fullness of the nations is, or the fullness of the Gentiles. The seed of Ephraim. So let's read it with revelation. Let's read it with the precept. Let's read it how it is, not how it's been diffused in these books. Let's unravel the mystery, shall we? We got script on it. It says out of the mouth of two or three witnesses, let their word be established. So this is an established word. Let's read it. For I would not, brethren, that you should be ignorant of this mystery, lest you should be wise in your own conceits. That blindness in part is happened to YASHARAHLA until the seed of Ephraim be come in. And so all YASHARAHLA shall be saved, as it is written, there shall come out of Zion the deliverer, and shall turn away ungodliness from Jacob. For this is my covenant unto them, when I shall take away their sins. Will you highlight? This is my covenant with them. Well, I'll take away their sins. Them who? The children of Jacob. That will be the house of Judah and the house of YASHARAHLA, or the seed of Ephraim, or the fullness of the nations. For the seed of Ephraim is the fullness of the nation, is the fullness of the Gentiles. Always has been, always will be. And no, these are not ethnic Gentiles. They're the seed of Ephraim, who is the seed of Joseph, who is the seed of Jacob, who is the seed of Isaac, who is the seed of Abraham. So no, these are not ethnic Gentiles. These are ethnic children, descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, just like the scripture said in Genesis chapter 48, that the names of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob would be upon the seed of Ephraim. Why? Because they are their fathers. They are descendants of these men by bloodline descent. The covenant was always cut along bloodline. There is no covenant that here you go, Constantine Christians. Here's your homework assignment for the week. Put it in the comment section when you find it. It'll take more than a week to find because it doesn't exist. But I'm just gonna put it out there for you. Show me where the Most High cut a covenant with you, with the nations, with the ethnic Gentiles, Old Testament, New Testament, Apocryphal book. Just show me. We're gonna hold it up to the standard of 2 or 3 witnesses. You show me where he cut a covenant with you, then I'll believe it. Then I'll stand down. You welcome to come to the barbecue. You welcome come to the cookout. You one of us. If it says so, you're one of us. I'll wait. I'll give you a week to come up with something. So it's an open challenge. You show me, bring out your scriptures, man. Come, let us reason together. Bring them out. You don't have them, do you? Now, if you go to, I'm going to give you the one little help. If you go to the epistle of Barnabas, you'll find it says something very similar to that. It's kind of convoluted. I think it's in epistle of Barnabas chapter 23, 24. Yeah. But epistle of Barnabas is heretical, for lack of a better term. Just get a good reference. Something reliable. Will you please? Get a reliable Bible. Get a reliable Bible like this, and not an unreliable Bible like this. Then we can talk. Because that epistle of Barnabas is found in this book. It's not found in this one. Children of Jacob, stick with the true, stick with the time tested, stick with that which brings out what thus saith Ahiah. All praise to the Most High, Ahiah, and to his son, Yahayasha, Messiah, Yadahayah.